Jake Morrison checked his watch for the third time in 5 minutes. The large clock on the wall of the Galactic Council chamber showed the same time, but old habits died hard. Back on Earth, he would have been having his morning coffee, right? About now, reading the news from his apartment window that looked out over New York Harbor. Instead, he sat in a chair designed for beings twice his size, listening to alien voices argue about shipping regulations through translation devices that made everyone sound like they were talking through water. Lisa Grant sat next to him, her fingers dancing across 3 data tablets at once. She had been his aide for 2 years now, ever since the council had finally agreed to let humans attend these meetings. Lisa was good at her job. She could track 17 different conversations happening around the chamber while simultaneously calculating trade percentages in her head. The Zephyrians are getting worked up about the grain shipments again, she whispered to Jake without looking up from her tablets. Jake nodded, but kept his diplomatic smile in place. The Zephyrians were tall, thin creatures that looked like someone had stretched a human being until they were 8 feet tall and forgot to add any muscle. They spoke in high, whistling sounds that the translators turned into voices that reminded Jake of his old high school principal. Ambassador Kethler of the Zephyrian Republic stood at the speaking podium, his long arms waving as he complained about Earth's agricultural exports. The human grain contains too much protein, his translated voice announced to the chamber. Our digestive systems cannot process such dense nutrition. We demand they reduce the protein content by 30%. Jake's smile never wavered, even though he wanted to point out that the Zephyrians had specifically requested high-protein grain in their original trade agreement. Earth had spent 2 years developing the hybrid crops to meet their exact specifications. Now they wanted to change the deal because their own nutritionists had made an error. We would be happy to work with the Zephyrian Republic to find a solution, Jake said when his turn to speak came. Perhaps we could provide 2 different grain varieties to meet your specific dietary needs. This would cost Earth millions of credits and require completely separate supply chains. But Jake said it with the same pleasant tone he might use to offer someone sugar for their coffee. The Altarian representative made a sound like wind chimes in a storm, which the translator rendered as polite agreement. The Altarians were Jake's favorite aliens to work with, mostly because they were the only species that seemed to understand basic courtesy. They looked like living crystals and communicated through harmonic vibrations that created the most beautiful music Jake had ever heard. The Altarian Collective appreciates human flexibility in trade matters, Ambassador Silphana chimed. However, we must address the ongoing issue of human expansion into the Outer Rim territories. Here it comes, Jake thought, but his smile remained steady. The humans have established 17 new colonies in the past year, Silphana continued. While we do not question their right to expand, we feel that such rapid growth may destabilize the region's economic balance. Jake had heard this complaint before. Every time humans built something new, someone on the council found a reason to worry about it. When Earth had established a mining operation in the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter, the council had expressed concern about militarization of space. When humans had built their first interstellar colony, the council had worried about aggressive expansion. The truth was simpler. Humans were good at building things, and that made some of the older species nervous. We understand the council's concerns, Jake replied. All human colonies follow established council protocols for expansion. We have submitted all required environmental impact studies and resource allocation reports. What Jake didn't mention was that those reports took 8 months to process, during which time humans had already built and populated their colonies. By the time the council finished their bureaucratic review, there were already human families. Living on those worlds, human children going to school, human farmers growing crops in alien soil. It was easier to approve a colony that already existed than to force people to abandon Their homes. Chairman Vexthal clicked his mandibles together, a sound that the translators couldn't convert into human language. Vexthal was an insectoid, creature from the core worlds with compound eyes that reflected the chamber's lighting like mirrors. He had been chairman of the council for longer than humans had known aliens existed. The chair recognizes the concern raised by the Altarian collective, Vexthal announced. However, human expansion falls within established council parameters. We will move to the next agenda item. Jake felt Lisa relax slightly beside him. She had been worried about the expansion issue for weeks. The newest human colonies were particularly successful, with crop yields and population growth rates that exceeded all projections. Success made some aliens nervous. The next speaker was someone Jake had been dreading. Gorthik of the Hegemony hauled his massive bulk to the speaking platform, leaving a trail of slime that the chamber's cleaning systems would need hours to sanitize. The Hegemony were slug-like creatures that measured their worth by how much territory they controlled and how many other species served them. The Hegemony wishes to address a growing concern, Gorthik announced, his voice rendered as a deep, wet gurgle by the translators. The human species has been granted significant autonomy for a relatively new member of this council. We believe this sets a dangerous precedent. Jake's fingers tightened slightly on his stylus, but his expression remained neutral. Other species have served this council for centuries before achieving their current status, Gorthik continued. The humans have been members for less than 5 years, yet they enjoy the same privileges as civilizations with millennia of proven stability. Several other council members made sounds of agreement. The Vorthan Dominion, a species that looked like upright reptiles, hissed their approval. The Corporate Federation, which wasn't really a species, but a collection of merchant races, chimed in with clicking sounds that meant they were calculating profit margins. What does the Hegemony propose? Chairman Vexthal asked. Gorthik's next words made Lisa's hand freeze over her tablets. Humans should be reclassified as a probationary species. Their expansion should be limited to their home system until they have proven their ability to contribute to galactic stability. Additionally, their trade privileges should be reviewed and reduced to levels appropriate for their actual experience. The chamber fell silent. Jake could hear the quiet hum of the air recycling systems and the soft clicking of Lisa's stylus against her tablet. A probationary classification would essentially make humans second-class citizens in the galaxy. It would void their trade agreements, force them to abandon their colonies, and put Earth under council oversight. Jake stood slowly, drawing the attention of every being in the chamber. His diplomatic smile never wavered. The human delegation appreciates the Hegemony's concern for galactic stability, he said in the same pleasant tone he had used all morning. We would like to request a brief recess to consult with our government regarding this proposal. Chairman Vexthal clicked his approval. The council will recess for 30 minutes. As the various alien species began filing out of the chamber, or clustering in small groups to discuss the proposal, Jake felt his communication device vibrate with an incoming priority message from Earth. Lisa was already reading the message on her tablet, and Jake watched her face go pale. What is it? He asked quietly. Lisa looked up at him, and for the first time since he had known her, she looked scared. Jake, there's been an attack. The Hegemony hit New Geneva Station 20 minutes ago. They're calling it a police action, but... She paused, swallowing hard. 3,000 people are dead. Most of them were civilians. Families. Jake felt something cold settle in his chest. His diplomatic smile remained in place, but Lisa noticed that his knuckles had gone white where he gripped his stylus. The stylus snapped in half. Jake Morrison stared at the broken pieces of his stylus in his palm. The plastic had snapped cleanly in two, and he could feel a small cut where one of the sharp edges had pressed into his skin. A tiny drop of red blood welled up, looking strangely bright under the chamber's blue lighting. Lisa was still reading from her tablet, her voice barely above a whisper. The attack happened during the morning shift change. Most of the casualties were workers heading to their jobs. There were families living on the station, Jake, children going to school. The 30-minute recess was supposed to give Jake time to contact Earth and discuss the hegemony's proposal to demote humanity to probationary status. Instead, he found himself staring at casualty reports from what the hegemony was calling a police action against illegal human expansion. New Geneva Station had been one of humanity's proudest achievements. Built at the edge of neutral space, it served as a trading post and diplomatic hub where humans could meet with alien species in a peaceful environment. The station had art galleries displaying the best of human culture, restaurants serving food from every continent on Earth, and schools where human children learned alongside young aliens from a dozen different species. Now it was gone. How many ships did they use? Jake asked, his voice still calm and diplomatic. Lisa scrolled through the report. 12 heavy cruisers and a dreadnought. They surrounded the station and demanded immediate evacuation. When Station Commander Hayes requested time to organize civilian transport, they opened fire. Jake closed his eyes for a moment. He had met Commander Hayes 2 years ago during the station's opening ceremony. She was a former Navy officer who had volunteered for the diplomatic corps because she believed in building bridges between species. She had 3 children and a husband who taught xenobiology at the station's research center. Survivors? He asked. The civilian transport made it out with about 200 people. The station's emergency pods saved maybe 300 more. Everyone else. Lisa didn't finish the sentence. Jake opened his eyes and looked around the council chamber. Most of the alien representatives had left during the recess, but a few remained in small groups, discussing the hegemony's proposal. The Zephyrians were whistling excitedly to each other near the main entrance. The Vorthan Dominion's representatives were hissing what sounded like approval. None of them seemed to know about New Geneva Station yet. Or if they did know, they didn't care. Jake's communication device chimed with an incoming call from Earth. He recognized the priority code immediately. Get through, he told Lisa. The holographic image of Admiral Kelly Brown materialized above Jake's desk. She was calling from the Pentagon, and Jake could see other military officials moving in the background behind her. Jake, I assume you've heard about New Geneva, Admiral Brown said without preamble. Just got the report. How bad is it really? Admiral. Brown's expression was grim. Worse than what you've seen. The hegemony didn't just destroy the station. They hunted down the escape pods. Civilian families trying to flee, and they hunted them down like animals. Jake felt something cold and hard settle in his stomach. All of them? We managed to save about 400 people total. The rest ... quotes. Admiral Brown paused. Jake, there. Calling it a police action, but it was murder. Pure and simple. Behind Admiral Brown, Jake could see other screens showing military readiness reports. Ship deployments, weapons status, troop movements. What's Earth's response going to be? Jake asked. Admiral Brown looked directly at him through the hologram. That depends on what happens in the council chamber in the next few hours. The president wants to know if there's any chance of a diplomatic solution. Jake thought about Gorthic's proposal to make humans a probationary species. He thought about the excited whispers from the other alien representatives who saw this as an opportunity to put the newcomers in their place. He thought about 3,000 human civilians murdered while trying to evacuate their homes. Admiral, in your professional opinion, if we respond diplomatically to this attack, how will the other species interpret it? Admiral Brown didn't hesitate. They'll see it as weakness. They'll think they can kill humans without consequences. Jake nodded slowly. And if more stations get attacked? Then we'll have more funerals to attend. The communication ended, and Jake sat in the suddenly quiet chamber. Lisa was watching him carefully, her tablets forgotten for the moment. "What are you thinking?" she asked. Jake didn't answer immediately. Instead, he pulled out his personal communication device and scrolled through his contacts until he found the number he was looking for. It was listed under Emergency Protocol 7, and Jake had hoped he would never need to use it. The call connected immediately. "Morrison, authorization code 77 Alpha Blue," Jake said into the device. A crisp male voice responded. "Confirmed, Ambassador. This line is secure. I need to speak with Colonel Dan Parker immediately. Stand by." Lisa was staring at Jake with confusion. She had never heard of Protocol 7, and she didn't recognize the name Dan Parker. "Jake?" A familiar voice came through the communication device. "Please tell me you're not calling about what I think you're calling about." Jake had known Dan Parker since college. They had been roommates at West Point, served together in the Army Rangers, and remained close friends even as their careers took them in different directions. Jake had gone into diplomacy, while Dan had remained in the military, eventually becoming one of Earth's most classified assets. "Dan, I need to know about the merchant fleet." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. "Jake, you know I can't discuss operational details over this channel. 3,000 civilians are dead, Dan, including children. The hegemony is calling it a police action." Another pause, longer this time. "The merchant fleet is ready, Jake. It's been ready for 2 years. Every single ship, every single crew member, every single piece of cargo. All of it." Jake felt a chill run down his spine. "How many ships?" 843 vessels, currently in Council space. Another 2,000 in reserve positions. "Jake, are you sure about this?" Jake looked around the council chamber. In a few minutes, the alien representatives would return from their recess. They would debate Gorthic's proposal to make humans second-class citizens. They would probably approve it, especially now that the hegemony had demonstrated that humans could be attacked without consequences. Then they would move on to other business, leaving 3,000 human dead as nothing more than a footnote in the council records. "I'm sure," Jake said. "Authorization confirmed. All merchant vessels are switching to military protocols effective immediately. Good luck, Ambassador." The communication ended. Jake looked at Lisa, who was staring at him with wide eyes. "Jake, what merchant fleet? What military protocols?" Before Jake could answer, the chamber doors opened and the alien representatives began filing back in. Gorthic slithered to his usual position, leading his trail of slime. The Zephyrians whistled to each other as they took their seats. Chairman Vexthul clicked his mandibles and called the session back to order. "The council will now hear the human response to the hegemony proposal," Vexthul announced. Jake stood up slowly. As he did, his communication device chimed with a message from Admiral Brown. It contained just 2 words: Phase 1. Jake's diplomatic smile returned to his face, but Lisa noticed it looked different somehow. Colder, more dangerous. "Honorable council members," Jake began, his voice carrying the same pleasant tone he had used all morning. "Before I respond to the hegemony's proposal, I believe there is another matter we need to discuss." Gorthic's wet, gurgling laugh filled the chamber. What matter could be more important than establishing proper order among the species? Jake's smile widened slightly. "The matter of New Geneva Station," he said quietly, "and the 3,000 human civilians who were murdered there this morning." The chamber fell completely silent. The silence in the council chamber was so complete that Jake could hear his own heartbeat. Every alien representative was staring at him, their various forms of eyes, sensors, and optical organs focused on the human ambassador who had just accused The hegemony of murder. Gorthic's massive bulk shifted on his platform, slime glistening under the chamber's lights. The human ambassador appears to be confused about recent events. He gurgled, his translator making the words sound even more dismissive. The hegemony conducted a lawful police action against an illegal human installation. Jake's smile never wavered. 3,000 civilians dead, including children. You call that a police action? The installation was built without proper council authorization, Gorthic replied. When ordered to evacuate, the humans refused to comply. The hegemony was forced to use necessary measures to maintain order. Jake felt Lisa's hand touch his arm gently, a warning to stay calm. But something had changed in Jake's expression, something that made several of the smaller alien species shift nervously in their seats. Necessary measures, Jake repeated slowly, including hunting down escape. Pods full of families trying to flee? Chairman Vexthul clicked his mandibles sharply. Ambassador Morrison, the council was not informed of any such incident. Do you have proof of these allegations? Jake reached into his jacket and pulled out a small device that projected a holographic display above the center of the chamber. The image that appeared made several council members recoil, in shock that it was footage from one of the escape pods, recorded by a survivor's personal device. The shaky camera showed families huddled together in the small emergency craft, children, crying as their parents tried to comfort them. Through the pod's small window, they could see the massive shape of a hegemony cruiser approaching. This is Escape Pod 7 from New Geneva Station, Jake's voice narrated over the recording. 43 civilians aboard, including 16 children. Watch what happens next. The hegemony cruiser in the recording opened fire. The escape pod's hull held for a few seconds before being torn apart. The recording ended in static. The chamber was completely silent again. Even Gorthic had stopped his usual wet breathing sounds. We have recordings from 12 different escape pods, Jake continued conversationally. All of them showing the same thing. Hegemony ships systematically hunting down and destroying civilian evacuation craft. The Altarian representative, Sylvana, made a sound like broken wind chimes. This is ... This cannot be lawful under any interpretation of council regulations. Jake's communication device chimed. He glanced at it and saw a message from Colonel Parker. All units report ready, awaiting your signal. The hegemony disputes these recordings, Gorthic said, but his voice lacked its earlier confidence. They could be fabricated. Jake nodded. Thoughtfully, you're right. Video evidence can be faked. So let me show you something that cannot be. He pressed another control on his device. New holographic displays appeared throughout the chamber, showing what looked like shipping manifests and cargo inventories. For the past 3 years, human merchant vessels have been trading throughout council space, Jake said. Food shipments, medical supplies, raw materials, manufactured goods. Very peaceful, very harmless. Lisa was staring at the displays with growing amazement. She was seeing shipping records she had never been told about, cargo manifests that didn't match anything in her official files. The thing about humans, Jake continued, is that we're very good at logistics. When we ship food to the Zephyrian Republic, we make sure it arrives fresh and properly preserved. When we send medical supplies to the Outer Rim colonies, we pack them in containers that can survive long journeys through space. The displays shifted, showing technical specifications that made several council members lean forward in their seats. But sometimes, Jake said, his smile growing wider, those food preservation systems look remarkably similar to military-grade armor plating. And those medical supply containers are surprisingly similar to weapons storage units. Chairman Vexthul's compound eyes reflected the chamber lights as they focused on the data. Ambassador Morrison, what exactly are you suggesting? Jake's communication device chimed again. This time it was Admiral Brown with a simple message. Merchant fleet has revealed true nature. All ships report weapons hot. I'm not suggesting anything, Jake replied. I'm telling you exactly what has been happening. Every human merchant ship currently in Council space is actually a disguised military vessel. Every trade good we've delivered over the past 3 years included military equipment and personnel. The chamber erupted in shocked sounds. The Zephyrians' whistles became sharp and panicked. The Vorth and Dominion's representatives hissed like angry snakes. Even the usually calm Altarians were chiming in distressed harmonies. This is impossible, Gorthic declared. Our intelligence services monitor all human activities. We would have detected military vessels. Jake pulled out his communication device and activated the speaker function. Colonel Parker, please update the Council on our current operational status. A crisp military voice filled the chamber. All units have dropped their cover identities. We currently have 843 armed vessels in Council space, with complete coverage of all major trade routes and strategic positions. Additional forces are moving into position from reserve staging areas. The displays in the chamber updated again, showing a 3-dimensional map of the galaxy. Red dots appeared throughout the image, each one representing a human military position. There were hundreds of them, forming a perfect strategic network that covered every important system in Council space. How long have you been planning this? Chairman Vexthal asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Planning what? Jake asked innocently. We've been completely open about our activities. We filed all the proper paperwork for our merchant vessels. We submitted cargo manifests for every shipment. We requested permission for every trade route. But you lied about the nature of your ships and cargo, the Zephyrian representative accused. Jake's smile became genuinely amused. Did we? Let me read you some of our shipping documents. He pulled up a holographic contract. Human vessel Peaceful Trader, carrying food preservation equipment to Zephyrian space. The equipment specifications are all listed right here. He pointed to a section of the contract. Titanium steel composite construction, capable of withstanding extreme pressure and temperature variations, with built-in power systems for long-term operation. That's a perfect description of both food, preservation equipment, and armor plating. Lisa was staring at Jake with a mixture of admiration and horror. You've been doing this the entire time? Not me personally, Jake replied. But humanity has been preparing for the possibility that diplomacy might fail. We hoped it wouldn't. Be necessary, but we're not stupid. Colonel Parker's voice came through the speakers again. Sir, we're receiving communications from hegemony forces throughout the sector. They're requesting clarification on our intentions. Jake looked directly at Gorthic. Tell them our intentions are very simple. The hegemony has exactly 24 hours to surrender the officers responsible for the attack on New Geneva Station. They will face trial for the murder of 3,000 civilians. And if the hegemony refuses? Gorthic asked. Jake's smile disappeared completely. For the first time since entering the council chamber 3 years ago, his diplomatic mask fell. Away entirely, revealing something cold and dangerous underneath. Then we'll come and collect them ourselves. The chamber's emergency alert system suddenly activated, filling the air with a low, pulsing tone. Chairman Vexthu's communication board lit up with incoming messages from across the galaxy. What is happening? He demanded. Colonel Parker answered through Jake's device. Council stations throughout the galaxy are reporting the arrival of human fleets. All vessels are maintaining defensive positions, but their weapon systems are fully active. Jake stood up slowly, and every being in the chamber watched him with the focused attention of prey animals that had just realized they were in the presence of a predator. For 3 years, we've played by your rules, Jake said quietly. We've been polite. We've been diplomatic. We've accepted insults and restrictions with grace because we believed in the possibility of peaceful coexistence. He gestured toward the holographic display, still showing the wreckage of the escape pods. But you murdered our children. That changes everything. The chamber fell silent again, except for the continued pulsing of the emergency alert and the soft sound of alien representatives trying to process what they had just learned. Jake's communication device chimed one more time. The message was from Earth's president. Full authorization granted. Show them what humans do when diplomacy fails. The emergency alert continued its low, pulsing tone as reports flooded into the council chamber from across the galaxy. Chairman Vex Thul's communication board was lighting up like a Christmas tree, each incoming message bringing news it made. The situation more terrifying for the alien representatives. Human fleets have appeared at the Kepler trade hub, one of Vexthul's aides reported in a trembling voice. 17 ships, all armed. They're requesting permission to dock. 3 human vessels have taken position around the Storie mining station, another aide added. The station commander is asking for instructions. Jake remained standing at his position, watching the chaos unfold around him with the same calm expression he had worn during 3 years of diplomatic meetings. Lisa was frantically updating her tablets with incoming data, her face growing paler with each new report. Jake, she whispered, there are human ships everywhere. How is this possible? Before Jake could answer, a new holographic display materialized in the center of the chamber. The image showed Admiral Kelly Brown standing in what appeared to be the command center of a massive warship. Behind her, Jake could see dozens of crew members working at control stations, their movements precise and professional. Admiral Brown reporting to the council, she announced, her voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to command. I am currently aboard the HFY Freedom, flagship of the 3rd Human Fleet. Gorthic's wet gurgling became more agitated. There is no 3rd Human Fleet. Our intelligence indicates that humans possess only a small defensive force. Admiral Brown's expression didn't change. Your intelligence was incorrect. The 3rd Fleet consists of 47 heavy cruisers, 12 dreadnoughts, and 86 support vessels. We are currently positioned 3 light minutes from this council station. The blood drained from several alien faces, or at least from those species that had blood. The others showed their fear in different ways. The Zephyrian's whistling became high and panicked. The crystalline collective's harmonic vibrations turned discordant. How many fleets do the humans possess? Chairman Vexthul asked, his clicking mandibles betraying his nervousness. That information is classified, Admiral Brown replied. What I can tell you is that every human military vessel is currently at full combat readiness, and all of our personnel have been briefed on the situation at New Geneva Station. Jake's communication device chimed again. Colonel Parker's voice came through clearly. Sir, we have confirmation. The hegemony fleet responsible for the New Geneva attack has been located. They're currently at the Epsilon sector base, approximately 6 hours from their home system. Fleet composition? Jake asked. 12 heavy cruisers and 1 dreadnought, just as reported. They match the energy signatures from our sensor records of the attack. Jake nodded and looked directly at Gorthic. Your murderers have been found. Do you want to surrender them voluntarily, or shall we collect them? Gorthic's massive bulk shifted nervously, leaving more slime on his platform. The hegemony does not surrender its military personnel to inferior species. This council has no authority to demand such action. You're right, Jake agreed pleasantly. The council doesn't have that authority, but we do. Admiral Brown's image leaned forward slightly. Ambassador Morrison, we have received updated intelligence on the target fleet. They appear to be preparing for departure from Epsilon sector. Running. Away? Jake asked. That would be my assessment, sir. Jake's smile returned, but it was nothing like his old diplomatic expression. This smile reminded Lisa of documentaries she had seen about sharks. "Admiral, please inform the Hegemony fleet that they have two options: surrender immediately for trial, or face the consequences of murdering human civilians." "Understood, sir." Message transmitted. The chamber fell silent, except for the continuing emergency alerts and the soft sounds of alien representatives trying to process what they were witnessing. Jake pulled out his communication device and made another call. "Colonel Parker, status of our assets in Hegemony space?" "All positions secured, sir. We have complete coverage of their major systems. If they attempt to mobilize their home fleet, we will know about it immediately." A Hegemony representative tried to maintain some dignity. "Your threats do not concern U.S. The Hegemony possesses the most powerful military force in this sector of the galaxy." Jake tilted his head slightly. "Colonel, please update our friend here on the current status of Hegemony military capabilities." Colonel Parker's voice carried a note of professional satisfaction. "The Hegemony home fleet consists of 63 capital ships and approximately 200 support vessels. However, 40% of their fleet is currently undergoing maintenance at facilities that are now within range of human weapon systems. Additionally, their primary shipyards have been experiencing technical difficulties with their defense networks." "What kind of technical difficulties?" Gorthik demanded. "The kind that happen when computer viruses are introduced into critical systems by maintenance personnel who aren't actually maintenance personnel," Jake explained. "Amazing how easy it is to get a job at alien facilities when you're willing to work for low wages and you have excellent technical skills." Lisa stared at Jake in amazement. "You've been infiltrating their systems?" "We've been preparing," Jake corrected. "For 3 years, we've been sending human workers to facilities throughout Council space. Engineers, technicians, computer specialists, medical personnel. All of them highly qualified, all of them willing to work hard, all of them reporting back to Earth about the capabilities and weaknesses of alien military installations." Admiral Brown's image nodded approvingly. "Sir, we're receiving a response from the Hegemony fleet at Epsilon Sector. They refuse to surrender. Their choice," Jake replied. "Colonel Parker, you are authorized to proceed with Operation Justice." "Confirmed, sir. All units are moving to intercept." New displays appeared in the chamber, showing real-time tactical information from across the galaxy. Jake watched with professional interest as red dots representing human forces moved toward their targets. "What is Operation Justice?" "Chairman," Vexthal asked, though his tone suggested he didn't really want to know the answer. "A demonstration," Jake replied. "The Hegemony believes they can murder human civilians without consequences. We're going to prove them wrong." One of the tactical displays focused on the Epsilon sector, showing the Hegemony fleet attempting to flee toward their home system. But as Jake watched, blue dots representing human vessels appeared around them, forming a perfect encirclement. "The human force outnumbers them 3-1, Admiral Brown reported. "The Hegemony commander is requesting terms for surrender." "Too late for that," Jake said coldly. "They had their chance to surrender the murderers voluntarily. Now they face the consequences." The tactical display showed the beginning of the battle. The Hegemony ships opened fire first, their weapons creating bright flashes on the screen. But the human response was overwhelming. The blue dots moved with precision and coordination that spoke of years of training and preparation. Within 10 minutes, it was over. "Hegemony fleet has been neutralized," Admiral Brown reported. "No human casualties. We are moving to secure the survivors for trial." The chamber was completely silent now, except for the sound of alien representatives breathing, or whatever their species did instead of breathing. The magnitude of what they had just witnessed was beginning to sink in. Jake looked around the chamber, his gaze stopping on each alien representative in turn. Let me make something very clear to all of you. For 3 years, we have been the polite newcomers, willing to accept insults and restrictions because we believed in the possibility of peace. That was our choice, not our weakness. He gestured toward the tactical displays still showing the aftermath of the battle. What you just saw was a small demonstration of what humans are capable of when our diplomatic approach fails. We didn't become peaceful because we were weak. We became peaceful because we were tired of being good at war. Gorthic tried to speak, but only managed a wet, gurgling sound. The old rules are finished, Jake continued. Humanity will no longer accept second-class status in this galaxy. We will no longer smile politely while aliens treat us as inferior. And we will never again allow the murder of human civilians to go unpunished. Jake's communication device chimed one final time. The message was from Colonel Parker. Phase 2 complete. All targets secured, awaiting further instructions. Jake looked directly at Chairman Vexthal. I believe it's time to discuss new terms for galactic civilization. Terms that humans will be writing. The council chamber had never been so quiet. Even the emergency alerts had been silenced, leaving only the soft hum of life support systems and the occasional nervous sound from alien representatives, who were still trying to understand how completely their world had changed in the span of a few hours. Jake Morrison walked slowly around the chamber, his footsteps echoing in the silence. Each alien representative he passed seemed to shrink back instinctively, as if they were suddenly aware that they were in the presence of something far more dangerous than they had ever imagined. The first thing we need to discuss, Jake said conversationally, is the concept of civilian protection. For some reason, several species in this council seem to believe that attacking non-military targets is acceptable behavior. He stopped in front of the hegemony section, where Gorthic was still trying to process the destruction of his species' fleet. The hegemony, for example, has a long history of using military force against civilian populations. Mining colonies, research stations, trading posts, always with the excuse that they were enforcing council regulations. Jake pulled out his communication device and activated another holographic display. This one showed a list of incidents going back decades. 17 attacks on civilian installations in the past 10 years. Over 50,000 non-military casualties across multiple species. All of it justified as police actions or regulatory enforcement. Chairman Vexthal clicked his mandibles nervously. Ambassador Morrison, while we regret these incidents, they were conducted under council authority and followed established protocols. Jake's expression didn't change, but something cold flickered in his eyes. Established protocols that humans had no part in creating. Protocols that apparently make it legal to murder families as long as you file the right paperwork afterwards. The holographic display shifted to show new information. Legal documents, council resolutions, military authorizations. All of them signed and approved by the various alien species over the years. This ends now, Jake announced. Effective immediately, any attack on civilian populations by any species will be considered an act of war against humanity. We will respond accordingly. The Zephyrian representative made a high, whistling sound of protest. Humans cannot simply declare themselves the protectors of all civilian populations. The Council has sovereignty over military actions within our territory. Jake smiled, and Lisa noticed that his diplomatic expression had returned, though it looked different now, more confident, more dangerous. You're absolutely right, Jake agreed. Humans can't simply declare ourselves protectors. We have to earn that position through demonstrated capability. Admiral Brown's holographic image flickered back to life above the chamber. Sir, we have completed the second phase of operations. All hegemony military installations have been secured. We encountered minimal resistance. Casualties? Jake asked. 17 wounded, none dead. The hegemony forces surrendered quickly once they realized the scope of our operations. Jake nodded and looked around the chamber. In the past 4 hours, human forces have successfully neutralized the most powerful military force in this sector of the galaxy. We did it with minimal casualties and maximum precision. I think that demonstrates our capability quite clearly. The tactical displays updated again, showing the current positions of human forces throughout the galaxy. The red dots had multiplied, covering every major system and trade route. It was a complete strategic network that had been hidden in plain sight for 3 years. The second thing we need to discuss, Jake continued, is the economic structure of this galaxy. Currently, newer species like humanity are forced to accept unfavorable trade agreements, while older species enjoy preferential treatment. He activated another display showing trade statistics and economic data. Humans provide 30% of the galaxy's agricultural output and 25% of its manufactured goods. In return, we receive 8% of the profits and are excluded from most lucrative contracts. The Corporate Federation's representative, an insectoid creature that looked like a praying mantis made of metal, clicked its mechanical voice translator. Trade agreements are based on established relationships and proven reliability. Newer species must prove their worth over time. Jake's smile widened. You're absolutely right again. Newer species do need to prove their worth. So let me ask you this. What do you think our agricultural output and manufacturing capacity will be worth when we stop selling to species that treat us as second-class citizens? The silence that followed was deafening. Several alien representatives were frantically calculating on their personal devices, trying to determine what would happen to their economies if humans suddenly stopped trading with them. Colonel Parker, Jake said into his communication device, please provide the Council with our new trade proposals. Colonel Parker's voice came through clearly. All existing trade agreements with species that supported the hegemony proposal are terminated immediately. New agreements will be negotiated on terms of complete equality, with profit sharing proportional to contribution. Species that wish to maintain trade relationships with humanity will need to sign new civilian protection accords. The Corporate Federation representative was clicking frantically. This would destabilize the entire galactic economy. Trade relationships that have existed for centuries would be destroyed. Yes, Jake agreed pleasantly. They would be. And then they would be rebuilt on fair terms that treat all species equally. Chairman Vexthal was receiving reports from his aides, each one apparently worse than the last. Ambassador Morrison, our analysts indicate that the economic disruption from your proposals would affect billions of beings across the galaxy. Jake's expression became serious for the first time since the confrontation began. Chairman, 3,000 human civilians were murdered this morning. Children were hunted down and killed while trying to flee their homes. If you're more concerned about economic disruption than the murder of innocents, then you've just proved why the current system needs to change. The truth of those words seemed to hit several alien representatives like a physical blow. The chamber fell silent again as they contemplated the moral implications of their priorities. The third thing we need to discuss, Jake continued, is council membership and voting rights. Currently, species are ranked by age and military power, with newer members having limited influence on decisions that affect their people. Jake activated a final holographic display, this one showing the Council's current power structure. Humans make up 12% of the galaxy's population and contribute significantly to its economy and resources. Yet we have less than 3% of the voting power in Council decisions. He looked directly at Chairman Vexthal. That imbalance will be corrected immediately. Voting power will be proportional to population and economic contribution, not based on how long a species has been part of the Council. Several of the older species made sounds of outrage, but they were quickly silenced when Admiral Brown's image appeared again. Sir, all human forces are in position. We await your orders regarding Phase 3 operations. Jake didn't need to explain what Phase 3 might involve. The alien representatives had already seen what humans were capable of when they decided to stop being diplomatic. That won't be necessary, Admiral, Jake said, never taking his eyes off the council members. I believe our friends here are beginning to understand the new reality. Chairman Vexthu's compound eyes reflected the chamber's lights as he processed the situation. What exactly are you proposing, Ambassador Morrison? Jake's diplomatic smile returned fully now, though it carried undertones that made it clear. The polite ambassador was gone forever. I'm proposing a new galactic order based on equality, justice, and the protection of civilian populations. Species will be judged by their actions, not their age or military history. Trade will be conducted fairly. Military force will only be used against legitimate military targets. He paused, letting his words sink in. And any species that violates these principles will discover that humans take a very personal interest in justice. Jake returned to his seat beside Lisa, who was staring at him with a mixture of admiration and amazement. The Council has 48 hours to ratify these new agreements. After that, we'll assume that any species not in compliance is choosing to operate outside the new system. Admiral Brown's voice came through the speakers one final time. All human forces will remain at their current positions until further. Notice, we look forward to working with our galactic neighbors under the new agreements. Jake leaned back in his chair and activated his personal communication device. Colonel Parker, please send a message to Earth. Tell them the diplomatic mission has been completed successfully. Understood, sir. How should I characterize the results? Jake looked around the chamber at the alien representatives who were frantically discussing the new reality among themselves. Some looked angry, others looked frightened, but most looked like they were beginning to understand that cooperation was their only reasonable option. Tell them that humanity's polite mode has been permanently disabled, Jake said. But our commitment to justice and equality has never been stronger. The council session was officially adjourned.